From the outside, Maya's life gleamed like polished marble. The kind of life that made people stare a second longer, whisper in admiration, and wonder how she managed to make it all look so easy. The elegant home nestled in a gated estate. The picture-perfect husband with a title and a tailored suit. The Instagram smiles. The charity galas. The luxury. The grace. The illusion. But behind that grand front door, Maya lived in a prison made of velvet. She had mastered the art of being agreeable, of nodding at the right time, smiling when expected, dimming her light just enough not to offend his pride. Every morning, she woke up before him to press his shirts. Every evening, she made sure dinner was on the table, even if she hadn't eaten all day. And every night, she lay beside a man who hadn't truly seen her in years. She was praised for her poise, envied for her man, but no one asked how she was. "Don't embarrass me," he whispered sharply that night, as they stepped out of their black SUV into yet another banquet hall. She adjusted her dress and her smile like armor. She was used to it now, the cold commands cloaked as concern. She walked beside him like a trophy, not a woman. At the table, he laughed loudly with his colleagues, while Maya sat quietly, fingers wrapped around her wine glass like it was the only warmth she had left. Every time she opened her mouth to add a comment, he cut her off or corrected her. A subtle jab here, a mock there, always in the name of jokes. She laughed because it was safer. Smiling had become her survival. But lately, something had started to stir, like a whisper inside her bones, a quiet, persistent ache. That week, she found an old journal while cleaning the guest room closet. Soft leather, pages still crisp. She hadn't written in years. Not since before the wedding. Not since her. The Maya who used to dance in thunderstorms, who wrote poetry on the backs of receipts, who dreamed of starting a girls' mentoring program in the city. That Maya felt like a ghost now. She opened the journal that night and held the pen awkwardly, like a foreign object. Then slowly, the words poured out like a faucet turned back on. "I feel like I'm shrinking. Not from hunger, but from silence. I'm tired of being pretty and polite. I want to be heard. I want to be me." She closed the book and held it to her chest like a secret. In that moment, for the first time in years, Maya felt something crack open. Something alive. The next morning, he barely noticed the shift in her. He asked for coffee, not kisses. Critiqued her outfit. Dismissed her suggestion for a weekend getaway. Typical. But Maya didn't argue. She just watched him. Noticed him. How small he actually was when he wasn't being cruel. How much space she'd given up to keep him comfortable. How long she had been pretending. And she began to wonder, what would happen if she stopped? It was a Tuesday morning, a forgettable day to anyone else. But to Maya, it was the first time in years she looked in the mirror and didn't see his wife. She saw someone tired, hollowed, but awake. She pressed her fingertips to her cheekbone, not because it hurt, but because she expected it to. Sometimes, the wounds left behind by words stung deeper than any slap. And in her case, they lasted longer. Her body bore no bruises. There were no purple shades beneath her skin, no raised welts to point to. If anything, she looked radiant, glowing even. But inside, her heart was a quiet battlefield, and the war had been going on for years. People always imagined abuse came with yelling, shouting, slammed doors, broken plates. Maya's pain was delivered in silence, in sighs that said, "You're too much." In the way he ignored her laughter, dismissed her ideas, and twisted her words into weapons. She could still hear his voice from the night before, clipped and cold. "You're lucky I even listened to you. Women like you don't get men like me." And for a moment, she had believed him. But not anymore. That day, she picked up her journal again. This time, the words were sharper, stronger. Less of a whisper, more of a truth screaming to be heard. "It's not that he stopped loving me. It's that he never really started. I was a role he needed filled, I forgot I was a whole woman before I ever became someone's wife. She wrote for hours, until her hand cramped and her eyes blurred. But she didn't stop. It was as if every word she wrote stitched a part of her back together. Afterward, she stepped outside. No makeup. No perfect hair. Just herself. She walked down the street, and for the first time in a long time, she noticed things. The wind on her collarbone, the sun teasing her skin, the weightlessness of not waiting for permission. At a cafe, she sat alone, phone on silent. She read a book she used to love before marriage made her forget she even liked reading. The barista smiled at her, not at her husband, not at her ring, but at her. She smiled back. That night, he barely looked up when she walked in. His eyes stayed glued to the TV, his voice robotic. "Where have you been?" "Out," she said softly. No guilt, no story. He turned toward her then, eyebrows raised in suspicion. "Out where?" She met his gaze, steady, calm. "Somewhere I could breathe." It wasn't a threat. It wasn't rebellion. It was a fact, and it stunned him into silence. She walked past him, head high. The fear she once wore like perfume was fading. The crown she was destined to wear, it was beginning to form, piece by piece, with every truth she finally stopped hiding. The first time Maya didn't respond to one of his jabs, he looked confused. The second time, he raised his voice. By the third, he said nothing at all. Silence, once her prison, was now her weapon, and he couldn't stand it. She no longer filled the space with excuses or apologies. She no longer explained why she was late or what she had been doing. She simply lived, freely, boldly, quietly. At night, she started sleeping in the guest room, claiming she needed space to think. At first, he laughed, said she was being dramatic, but as the days passed and she didn't come back, the laughter faded. He began asking more questions. "Are you okay? Is there someone else? Are you trying to punish me?" Maya simply blinked. "I'm just choosing myself." He didn't know what to do with that answer. For years, her life had revolved around him, his needs, his schedule, his moods, and now she was orbiting elsewhere, a planet no longer caught in his gravity. She started reconnecting with old friends, women she hadn't seen since her wedding. She told them the truth, huakalash to them, not the fairy tale, but the unfiltered, painful, liberating. She started reconnecting with old friends. Fairy tale. One of them, Amara, squeezed her hand and said, "You're brave." She started reconnect with old friends. She started, and for the first time, Maya believed it, not because she had left yet, but because she was preparing to. She began saving money. Quietly, strategically, she met with a counselor. She researched apartments. She made plans, not fantasies. Plans. And the morning she slipped off her ring and placed it on the marble bathroom counter, there was no ceremony, no dramatic monologue, just stillness, peace, power. She stared it. She didn't cry. She smiled. Because the day she took off the ring,
Maya left on a Thursday. Not because it was symbolic. Not because she needed it to mean something. But because the lease on her new apartment started that morning. And she had finally collected enough pieces to walk out the door. There were no suitcases rolling dramatically down the stairs. No screaming match. No tears. She had apartment, packed over 2 weeks with one handbag at a time. Her jewelry, her documents, her laptop, her shoes, slowly, stealthily, without alerting him. That morning, she woke up before sunrise, showered, dressed in a simple cream blouse and jeans. She wore her hair in a low bun and left her wedding ring behind on the nightstand, resting beside his expensive watch like a final punctuation mark. She left a single note on the kitchen table. Don't look for me. I'm not lost. That was it. She didn't wait for him to wake. She didn't say goodbye to the home that had held so much silence. She simply walked out the door, pulled it shut, and with every step toward the waiting cab felt lighter. The city felt different that morning. The apartment air was crisp. Even the chaos of traffic seemed beautiful to be. At her new apartment, small, sunlit, imperfect, processed, Maya stood in the center of the empty living room and breathed. For the first time in years, the space was hers. Not just the walls and the furniture, but the silence too. It was no longer dangerous. It was healing. She didn't post a long caption. She didn't make a scene. She didn't need the world.
She launched the mentoring program she'd always dreamed about. The Crown Project aimed at helping young women find their voice, their purpose, and their power before life convinced them to shrink. The first time she stood in front of a group of teenage girls and said, "You don't have to be anyone's good girl to be worthy," she almost wept, because she wasn't just teaching them, she was healing the girl inside her who had forgotten that too. Some nights were still hard. There were moments when the silence felt too loud, the memories too vivid. The weight of years lost, words swallowed, dreams postponed. It could crash down like a wave. But now, she let herself feel it. All of it. She cried when she needed to. She rested without guilt. She danced in her living room at midnight with no music, just because it reminded her that she was alive. And slowly, her smile began to reach her eyes again. One morning, she woke up and didn't think about him at all. Not in anger, not in sadness, not even in memory. She thought about herself, what she'd cook, what she'd create, what outfit would make her feel like the goddess she was. That was the moment she realized she was no longer healing for the sake of escaping her past. She was building a future. It was a warm afternoon when Maya returned to her old neighborhood. Not for closure, not for drama, just to pass through. She wore a soft linen dress, gold hoops, and no makeup. Her skin glowed, her spirit radiated something unshakable. She saw the house from afar, still standing, still beautiful, still quiet. She didn't stop, didn't need to. She had nothing left there. The woman who once bent over backwards in that home no longer existed. In her place stood a woman who had learned that power doesn't come from how well you hold someone else's life together. It comes from how boldly you reclaim your own. Maya's phone buzzed. A message from Amara. "You still good for the panel tonight, Queen?" She smiled. Queen, a word that once sounded distant, now felt like skin. She replied, "Always. Let's remind them who They are. That night, Maya sat beside 3 other powerful women on a panel titled, Becoming the Woman You Were Before the World Told You to Shrink. When it was her turn to speak, she stood. No podium, no script, just her voice. Sometimes becoming everything you were meant to be starts with walking away from everything you were never meant